Hi everyone, welcome to the EFL Magazine podcast. Today's guest is Jerry Kolber. Jerry is the Emmy-nominated creator of National Geographic's #1 series, the Emmy-nominated Brain Games, and is the creator of the family podcast Mysteries About True Histories and Who Smarted, the world's most popular thrice-weekly kids educational podcast, reaching over 15 million downloads. As a pioneer in educational entertainment, he partnered with Pharrell Williams to create Netflix hit series Brainchild, continuing his mission to make learning both engaging and entertaining. A seasoned creator and showrunner, Kolber specializes in developing groundbreaking educational content that challenges traditional learning models while captivating audience through compelling storytelling. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Welcome to the EFL Magazine podcast, the go-to show for teachers and school owners in the world of English language education. Whether you're just starting your journey and looking for your first teaching job abroad, or you're an experienced educator aiming to build a thriving teaching business, this podcast is for you. Join us as we explore expert insights, share success stories, and provide actionable advice to help you excel in every stage of your teaching career. Tune in and take your passion for teaching to the next level. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the EFL Magazine podcast. And I'm really stoked to have our guest today, Jerry Kolber from Atomic Entertainment. And Jerry is the co-founder of Atomic Entertainment. And we'll dig into what all that means a little bit later. And how are you, Jerry, today?
I am good, man. I've had a couple of cups of coffee and I'm feeling great.
Great. And it's early morning for you, evening for me. So how are things in New York?
Getting a little chilly the last week. Little crazy with the holidays and everything. A lot of tourists around, but generally things are pretty good here.
And how are things with tourism in New York? Because, you know, I've had a few guests over the past few weeks, and especially here in Tokyo, the over-tourism is... it's really an issue. But, you know, New York has always got a lot of tourists. How are things now increasing or?
Yes. Yeah. I think they said like we're having record tourism this year, which we need. I mean, the city, so much of the city is geared around tourism. So our office is down in the South Street Seaport in the financial district. So during this time of year, it's just packed. Everywhere is just packed with tourists. But, that's part of living in the city, and it's part of what keeps the city going. So it is what it is.
Is what it is.
Come to New York.
Come to New York. Yeah, definitely. I want to. But many people say the best time to visit New York is in the fall, is it? And winter's too cold, summer's too hot.
Fall and spring. Spring's also great. Yeah.
Here in Tokyo, 3 seasons are great. Summer, maybe don't do it. Yeah. It's too hot and humid. But Atomic Entertainment, where did you come up with the name? Is it from Debbie Harry's famous song Atomic? Are you a Blondie fan?
I wish I am a Blondie fan. I wish I could say that's where it came from. No, it was actually my business partner Adam Tex Davis suggested it. I think I don't know if we ever talked about this publicly, but I think it came from the names of the atomic bomb, because we do a lot of science programming, a lot of science education, and the atomic bombs were named like Fat Man and Little Boy, and for some reason that made him think of us, so we became Atomic Entertainment.
Yeah. So on that, of course, touchy subject here in Japan, of course, but on the movie last year, what was your impression of the Oppenheimer movie?
I really enjoyed it. I actually felt like the film did not take more. Felt like it could have taken a more of a philosophical stance on the actual project. To be honest, it felt like it was really focused on the science and sort of glorifying the process, which was an incredible process. But it for me it would lacked a little bit of a moral compass in terms of the actual purpose of those bombs and that research. So I thought the movie was great, but I left it feeling a little, I don't know. I had some questions about the point of view of the film.
Yeah. So actually you're a filmmaker yourself. And I know just looking at Rotten Tomatoes here and tomatoes, sorry, as you say in the States. And I was really sad to see something here. It says one of your movies called Sexual Secrets, and underneath it says there's no offer for sexual secrets at this time in your location. I was
I'm so sorry.
devastated.
Sorry, but I'll bet you could find some somewhere.
So
Tokyo, you've got to be
yeah,
able to find some. I mean, come on.
yeah, yeah.
That's an old indie film that we made. We made that movie back in the 90s, and it was originally called The Eden Myth, and a distributor actually who bought it changed the name. But yeah, it was a cool little movie about a family reunion. But I don't know if it's available anywhere at this point.
It seems not to be, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'd like to catch it sometime. But getting back, we'll just start at the beginning. We're talking about Chile, New York, but that's not where you came from. You come from South Florida.
Yes, from the swamp. I come from the swamp.
So it's swamps. So what I know about Florida is swamps, airboats, Tony Montana, Disney World.
Uh-huh.
What's more to Florida than what I know or
It's
what people have
literally
in mind?
that heat and rain, and that's it. That's the entirety of Florida, and some really crazy rules around what you can teach in schools. But yeah, I grew up in the swamps, very close to the Everglades. So I was around airboats and all of that, and I did grow up there in the '80s. So there was a bit of a Tony Montana presence, you
Oh,
might say.
oh, really? Okay, yeah.
So not for me, obviously, but and I was a nice Jewish boy growing up in South Florida, but it was around, you know. But yeah, have you been to Florida?
I've never been. No, I've never been to the US, so there you go.
Okay.
It's definitely next on it's on my bucket list. I mean, I've been to a lot of countries. I don't know why I've never been to the US, but it's actually the one country I really want to visit. I'm not really
Mhm.
bothered about visiting anywhere else. I've already been there, or I feel that, the US is somewhere I want to visit. So
Yeah.
yeah, I have it in mind. But yeah, getting back there, you started off in Florida, and I see you were an avid cyclist, theater kid, and nationally ranked a Lincoln Douglas debater. What is a
I
Lincoln
was.
Douglas debater? Sorry
Link,
for the us.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln had a famous debate. It was with Douglas back in whenever it was in the early time formation of our country. That sort of became a format for debating where one person presents their arguments for 3 minutes, the other presents their arguments for 3 minutes. There's a rebuttal, a wrap up, and a wrap up. So it's this very specific format that puts a container around a debate and a conversation around important issues. And then that format became an actual debate competition format, maybe in the 50s or 60s of 1950s, 1960s. And so I was a debater, and I was on a very well ranked national squad out of Miami Palmetto, a senior high in the 80s, and that was my specialty was that debate format, and it was an amazing way to learn critical thinking and research skills and public speaking. So that's what it is. And that was my I was nationally ranked. I won a few national competitions.
Fantastic. So for somebody who wants to get better at debating, can you give me some cliff notes there on debating skills?
Yeah. So the best way to get better at debating is to force yourself to make a, say, 2 or 3 minute presentation on a topic, right? A controversial topic, pick any topic, but take the side that is opposite what you actually believe, right? So if you believe in a woman's right to choose, then make a presentation on why women shouldn't have the right to choose, right? Or if you're talking about vaccines or immigration, or pick something that you would have a very strong, likely have a very strong opinion on, and then really research the other side and stand up as if you're an attorney for the other side and make a compelling argument for against your own beliefs, right? Because it forces you to really think through the issues and think through critically why someone else would think that other way. And that allows you to then start to understand how to rebut the arguments, right? So the best way to rebut someone else's argument is to be able to make their own argument. And
Yeah.
by the way, this works for negotiations. It works for any kind of situation where you're trying to get to a mutual outcome. really taking the time to understand the other side is really, I mean, it's really invaluable.
Looking for the best tools and resources to support your teaching or grow your school? Check out the EFL Magazine Buyer's Guide, your one-stop shop for top-rated products and services in English language education. From classroom materials to business tools, we've got you covered. Visit EFL Magazine today and find exactly what you need to take your teaching to the next level. Yeah, and one of the criticisms of modern media in America, I was just reading something on Twitter today about they did some analysis of headlines on all the major media, legacy media, and the fear and the anger headlines have gone up, and the joy and the neutral have gone down, haven't they? And it seems that in the past, in the US, for example, and it still exists in other countries, but there were let's say it was more neutral, it was more nuanced, more balanced, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But now you have silos, don't you? Your political tribe is in a particular area, and you're just on you're in an echo chamber, aren't you?
Yes.
Of beliefs.
Yes.
So yeah, from what you're saying about debating, it's very much the opposite of that. It's very much about seeing the other person's point of view and being able to talk about that rationally and calmly.
Yes. So yeah, the challenge is, so there's a few levels to this. So it is true that here in America we have become media silos. So you kind of tend to get your news from people who agree with you, and it's very partisan, political, or tribal. The first thing that you have to do to understand someone else's point of view is the first step is you have to actually understand that there is another point of view. And so there is an awful lot of people who actually don't realize that, right? They actually think that the information they're getting is like a factual definition of reality rather than a biased interpretation of reality. So that's step one. If you are able to realize that, if you have the self-awareness to realize it, then the next step is you actually have to want to care about it, right? Because you might say, yeah, I know, I watch, Fox News or MSNBC, and I know it's totally biased. I'm okay with that. I like what they say. So you're at the same level, right? You actually have to then decide, okay, I'm gonna take a moment, take a breath, and look and see, like, what is the other side saying? Why are they saying it? Why do they think that way? And that starts to take some energy and bandwidth and time that I just don't think a lot of people care to take. I think it's easier. Look, we did a show called Brain Games for National Geographic for 6 seasons, and one of the Atomic Entertainment projects. And one of the things that kept coming up in that show was a show about how the human brain works. Is that the brain there's two things that are true about everybody's brain. It consumes more power than any other part of your body by weight. It's like 20% of your energy goes to your brain, even though your brain is only like 3 pounds, right? So that's true for everybody. And then the second thing that's true is that one of the core functions of everyone's brain is to function as efficiently as possible, right? So if you think of it like a car with an engine, your brain's trying to conserve energy. And so what's happening, I think, with a lot of the media silos is it's actually an unconscious brain function that, like, okay, I got my information. I don't want to spend any more energy. I don't need to do any more research. I need to look at the other side. I need to see if this is true or not. And so we're really fighting. It's like at a very real level, you're almost fighting like the primal nature of how your brain works. If you're actually taking action to figure out the other side's point of view. And I think most people come home at the end of the day, and they don't want to do that. They want to chill out and not have to put that energy out. So I think that's the problem.
Yeah, it is, and I think people just like shouting and being angry as well. It's about venting, isn't it? But actual real persuasion requires a little bit of what we say, rapport, compassion, doesn't it? I remember I read, I think it was Mark Lillia's book a few years ago. He was talking about liberalism in the US, the Now and Future Liberal, I think it was called, and he made the point that not picking a particular side here. I'm not from the US, so it doesn't really apply to me. But he was saying that a lot of people try to browbeat with their opinions, don't they? But actually, if you're and I've noticed this myself. There's certain opinions I don't agree with, but I've watched some podcasts, but the speakers have been so eloquent and so kind that I'm actually, oh, they make a good point. But if the person is
Mhm.
angry and trying to force their opinion, we're naturally going to reject it, aren't we?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, angry shouting never really moves the needle. Yeah, no one's ever walked away from getting yelled at and go, "Oh yeah, they were right." It just brings up something in you where you're just like, screw you and everything you're saying and I don't want to hear it. So,
Yeah, that's the unfortunate way. But we'll move on from that anyway. I want to get talking about coming on to the Cocteau Repertory Theatre on the Bowery.
yes.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, the Cocteau Rep was a theater that had been founded back in the 60s, and coming out of NYU, I got hired to help run that theater. And it was this amazing little theater company of about 10 people who we did, I think, 10 plays a season, but we would do them in repertory. So on a Friday night, we'd do one show, swap all of the scenery, put up another show, do the next show, and the same actors were in all the shows. So it was this incredible, just super dedicated group of actors who were able to do that and shift from night to night, from show to show. And it was, really wonderful little theater. It was there for I think about 60 years until now. It's on Bowery and Bond in the East Village. I think it's now a clothing store maybe, but it hung on there for quite a while. But it was a very very cool experience. But it was it was also a place where I learned about being very efficient with time and money because we didn't have a lot of either of those. So that was a job where we were working sometimes in the basement in the winter in New York with like all of our winter clothes on because we were trying to save money and not put the heat on unless the audience was there. So it was that kind of experience.
And what was the size of the theater? A very intimate venue, was it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was about maybe 170, 180 seats.
Okay, well,
So,
big enough.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not like super intimate, like 10 or 20, that you sometimes.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't like a super tiny theater, but it was small.
Small
Yeah.
for New York. I mean, because everything
Yeah.
is big in New York, isn't it? But for like some other city, it might be medium sized. And then you immediately went to post-communist Czech Republic.
Yes, I did. Why not? Right?
About 1990, around that time, or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so me and a bunch of other kids from NYU and New York went to the Czech Republic just after the fall of communism, and we spent 4 months there doing theater as part of a theater festival. And we showed up. We were planning to work with a bunch of Czech theater kids, and the second we arrived, we discovered that they had all left for Paris and London and other places where they hadn't been able to go before the fall of communism. So they were not there. So we ended up just finding a bunch of other folks to work with there. But yeah, that was a very, very fun experience. Very wild.
Yeah, that time in Eastern Europe in Russia was quite a time. I think first time I visited Eastern was about 98, so I kind of missed out on all the fun. But we had the stories in school about, I don't know, apocryphal stories of you bring a pair of denim jeans and you get like a Coca-Cola and people all want to buy it from you. Were those stories true or?
I did not experience that myself. I've heard those stories, but no, we didn't see that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
And
it's a good story though. It's a
it
good
is a
story.
good story.
Like
It's like yeah, and actually it it very much relates to a show that you were involved in is Mythbusters. So maybe I don't know
yes.
how they would test that one out on Mythbusters. So tell me about working on Mythbusters. I was a big fan of it in the day, and I think my favorite was the they get the water boiler through the roof. I remember
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I didn't work directly on the show. I worked with Adam Savage, who was the host of that show. We did another show together that was called GE in the Wild, where we went around with him to different factories and labs around the world, just like talking about new technology. But he was amazing to work with, and that was an opportunity to work with a brand and help tell their story and help them get some attention for some of the great work they were doing. And Adam, because of his profile in Mythbusters and just the amazing way he thinks about the world, he was the perfect host for it.
Yeah. And I wanted to actually, on that subject, something I read today was about, company brand and personal brand. And they're saying
Yeah.
that now personal brands, I suppose, with the, influencers, etc., are much more powerful. And they gave the example of the Premier League teams in the UK, or sorry, in England, and they said that the combined followers of all the Premier League teams is 200 million, but
Hmm.
Cristiano Ronaldo is 400 million.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
he's double all the Premier League teams. Is that
Right.
what you've seen in your experience over the years? And
Yeah, I think we're in a world now where even the real brand, like the big brands, they need to have their own personas, so to speak, or their own like content that really tells their story because people are just more interested in people. I mean, that's social media, love it, hate it, whatever. It's here and it's really it's like opened a window into other people's lives in a way that we never really had before. And so it just seems like personal, like strong personal brands really resonate. And that can run the gamut from, brands that are people who are creating brands that are about positivity and education and inspiration, all the way to, we all know there's brands that are all about, personal brands that are about like sowing division and anger and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, but they're all much more heavily followed and engaged with than any corporate social media profile, for sure.
mm, mm. It's as they say, corporations are faceless, aren't they?
Yeah.
Traditionally, that's how we saw them. And when you came back to the States, you started working for Disney, Universal and Disney. Tell me about
Speaking
your
of
experience
speaking of
there.
big corporate brands,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I hated it.
Oh, really?
I did not like work. Yeah, I mean, it was a weird like the job was I was helping I was an assistant in the theatricals division when they were starting to do theater shows based on Disney properties. And coming from like my background is as like a creative and a producer, and being able to just like have an idea, try it out and kick it around and test things out quickly. And what I learned working for Disney was that's just not the way things are done there or at the big corporations. Everything is very slow by committee. It's by the time an idea gets through the pipeline, it has usually little of the original idea left in it because, each department gets to touch it, and it just wasn't for me. A lot of people love working there. I didn't, and I don't think it was unique necessarily to Disney. I just don't think that I the way that I work and the way that I create doesn't really fit into the kind of corporate process in that sense. We do a lot of work now as Atomic with brands. So we get hired a lot by brands. Like the project we did with Adam Savage from Mythbusters was sponsored by General Electric. We've been hired by IBM, by Northrop Grumman, by Siemens, Topgolf. All of these brands will hire us to create content, but then we're working as the creatives and the production team. And so it's not like we're working inside the company. We're actually being engaged by them to do something they can't do internally, which is to come up with great ways to tell their story and to market their story and to attract people to whatever it is they're trying to whatever information they're trying to share. So that working that way, I love working with brands in that fashion. But working inside a corporation, man, I don't know. I don't know if you've ever done it, but it's a very, very different beast than doing your own thing or even working for a small business.
Yeah, well, not for me. I mean, I've done it, and I don't do it anymore. That's all
Yeah.
I'll have to say about that. But yeah, but some people do love it. Some people thrive on the
Yeah.
whole system and the politicking, don't
Yeah.
they? And yeah, and the schmoozing.
Yep.
But yeah, it's not for me. Not
I
for
mean,
me.
I
Yeah.
could do a little schmoozing and a little hanging out, but like, yeah, spending half your day on the politics of the organization, yeah, not for me.
Yeah, that's not the way. But the good news was after leaving that, you worked on one of my favorite shows, which is Queer Eye for a Straight Guy. So
Yes. Oh,
yeah,
you love that show.
I love that show, but it's been a long time since I've seen it, so I can't even remember it. I used to watch that and What Not to Wear USA,
Yep.
wasn't it? Is it Spencer
Yeah.
Kelly? Is that the guy who was on it?
Oof,
Is that was
man,
his
I
name? Was
don't
that
remember.
I don't know. I don't remember
I can
the
I
episodes,
can
but I
picture it.
remember his
Yeah.
name. Yeah. I think I remember one episode he said there's one woman she was like interning and he said she wants to start from the ground floor, but the way she dresses, she's subterranean. So
That's a good line.
he was just full of these quips, but yeah, Queer Eye for a Straight Guy. Where did the idea come from?
Yes, that came from these two guys, both named David, who were producing partners up in Boston, and they were together at a party. And I think someone came up to one of them was gay, and someone came up to one of them and said to the one who was gay and said, "Hey, can you give my husband some tips? You look great. He doesn't know how to dress." And so they started talking, and out of that conversation, they realized, "Hey, maybe there's a show idea here," and that's what sparked Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. And then they made a pilot of it, and then I was brought on after the pilot to produce some. I think I did the first 60 episodes of it. So,
Oh wow, okay,
yeah,
but we can't say that all gay guys can dress well because there are some
sure.
bad dressers. Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
100%. I
It's a
know
very, it's
one.
very, yeah. It's not a universal thing. So,
Yeah, we
and by the way,
better.
not all straight guys don't dress well. It's like, but I think that yeah, the idea of the show is this sort of like the gay superheroes helping the really schlubby straight guys. So
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
I know. I love his show. I love him. Is Graham Norton, but his
yeah,
fashion wouldn't be for me. But
right.
yeah. So what did you learn from that show? I mean, so you'd been working in Eastern Europe, and you've been picking up all these things, managing a theater,
Yeah,
okay, a small theater on a budget, going to Eastern Europe, a foreign country at such a pivotal time of change, and then the corporate job, and then
yeah.
producing this for yourself. So all the experience, knowledge that you'd gained and on this job, how did that serve you well, and what did you learn on that job?
Sure. Yeah. So everything I'd done up to that point was more theater and smaller projects for the most part. But with Queer for the Straight Guy, initially that show was when we started making it, it wasn't a hit. Obviously, it hadn't come out yet. So the budgets were quite small. So everything that I learned in theater was really coming in handy in terms of like how to spend a dollar like it's $100. And so we all were able to get super creative and make the show work on not a very big budget initially. And then once the show launched and the network Bravo, realized that Queer Eye for the Straight Guy was just a massive hit, they ordered, I think, 40 episodes in the first year, and we'd made 12 in the previous year. And so then I got a crash course in how to run a very fast moving production with a lot of moving parts and a lot of people. And that is really where I learned how to produce TV, I would say, is from that experience. I had worked in the production finance department on a few TV shows, but they were much more traditional scripted shows. This was just like it was nonstop 5 days a week, and my office walls were just covered with charts and boards and times, and it was where I really learned how to keep all the trains running on time.
Okay, sorry, you
And
just
also I laughed a
frozen.
lot at the
Yeah,
show.
you
I
laughed a
laughed.
lot.
Oh. Is it also I laughed a lot? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, just froze a
It was
little
a very
bit
fun
there.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and and Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, and then you went on a wild ride, according to your bio here, in the rapidly expanding early landscape of unscripted TV, and we've talked about
Yes.
unscript there,
Yeah.
Bravo Disney,
Yeah.
Animal Planet, etc. So tell me
Yeah.
about that wild ride.
The wild ride, man. Yeah, and it was like there was like a 5 or 6 year period where I just kept getting hired and hired and hired to be a showrunner on these unscripted shows. I did Inked, which was a tattoo show set in Las Vegas. I worked on Confessions of a Matchmaker, which was a show, a love-seeking show set in Buffalo, New York, in the dead of winter. Just a bunch of shows, just from show to show to show, and that was just a master class in storytelling for me because at that point I knew how to produce and keep the show running. But what I really learned from just that solid run of shows was how to create story where there isn't necessarily story, right? And so it taught me how to look at any situation and not just see it for sort of the surface of what's happening, but like what's happening underneath, and how can you create a compelling story with 3 act structure and something that's going to have people hanging on and watching out of what doesn't necessarily look like a story at face value. So we call it unscripted, but I would say that I learned how to write actually from all
Mm.
of that. So, yeah.
Confessions of a Matchmaker. Already the title has me intrigued. What?
Be very intrigued. It was a fun show. I don't know if that one's available anywhere, but yeah, it was a matchmaker in Buffalo, New York, helping just regular people find love. It was like a very wasn't they weren't millionaires, they weren't anything. Like it was just regular people in Buffalo who were lonely or hadn't been able to figure out how to find a match. And so we would put them through this process with this matchmaker, and it was a very, it was pretty much the kind of stuff she would do anyways, but we just kind of zhuzhed it up for TV and figured out how to tell the stories in a really compelling way.
So kind of like Emma for the new age, is it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
much. Was there any story stood out, particularly touching or funny or?
Yeah, there was one that I loved. This guy Charlie, he'd been a bodybuilder like model in his early, younger days, and he'd grown, he'd had a wife, and I think she passed away, and then he opened a barber shop. He was like the big barber in Buffalo, New York, but he'd gained a lot of weight. Like he was just at a weight that he didn't feel was healthy for him, and he felt shy, and he just didn't know how to. He just kind of had lost his mojo, and you know, we got pretty deep with him. Patty got really into sort of what were his issues, and he went on a few dates, but he ended up meeting this one woman, and they just really hit it off, and it was just a really sweet thing to see him. He was able to like let his guard down and be himself. And I just remember that story made me feel like, yeah, there's like real transformation happening here. Like someone's actually had a shift, and we had that with quite a few stories on the show. But that one I remember just felt we were all like a little like oh, Charlie's
Mm.
finding somebody, so it was great.
And okay, so one thing is to match people, but the retention rate, if that's the right,
Yeah.
I mean, have these been enduring romances? Have
There
you?
was a few that were. I have honestly, it's been a minute. That was quite like 15 years ago at this point. But um, I had been following up pretty regularly for a few years, and there was three or four that actually stuck. So I'm not going to vouch that they're still together, but definitely had a pretty decent retention rate coming right out of it.
Yeah, maybe because I read the divorce rate in the US is like 50%, isn't it? So if
Mm.
you can improve on that, it's a success, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
And so moving on then, you had a love of entertainment and you disdain for outdated one size fits all education together.
Yes. Yes.
And Brain Games provided the first of
Yep.
many opportunities to show what was possible.
Yes, yeah. So I was always a very curious kid and very like interested in how the world works, but I was a pretty bad student in school. And I just always felt inadequate in my math classes and science classes, even though I was always interested in that stuff outside of class. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized that it was just, the way the school system is, at least in the US, it's just really it's designed to teach kids in a very specific way. There's not a lot of latitude for different learning styles, or at least there wasn't when I was going through it. And my learning style just didn't match. I'm more of an experiential learner. I need to like do and play and all of that, versus book learning. That's not how I learn. And so when I was working for National Geographic and they wanted to do a new show about the human brain, it was an opportunity to kind of take my love of science and then my love of play and games and create something that the Brain Games is a neuroscience show that you can watch even if you think you could never understand anything about neuroscience, you'll walk away from Brain Games learning something about how your brain works and why it works that way, because the show was designed with play and games and fun in mind while also delivering really credible, science information. And so that was the first opportunity I had to, put together my own realizations about why I'd been a bad student with an opportunity to create a show that's really the show I wished had existed, when I was in high school trying to understand this stuff.
Yeah, and it's been there's been a lot of research on play and learning, hasn't there? And
Yeah.
how it does we use the word retention again, okay, but
Yeah.
it does improve learning, understanding, memory, embodied cognition.
Yes. Yeah. It's because play activates a level of engagement that you don't have otherwise. Whether there's really two ways to get someone really engaged: either create play, a sense of play and competition, and engage in that way, or create a sense of stakes, right? That something really bad's going to happen, and to like if they don't learn this information. So if you're, you know, if you're out learning how to do mountain climbing and they're teaching you how to tie the rope that's going to keep your harness on, you're going to pay attention and you're going to make sure you learn it and you're going to do it again until you remember it because the stakes are high. If I have you in a classroom and I'm like, okay, we're going to learn how to tie this knot now, you might not care as much and you might not get engaged. So that's one way to do it. And then the other way is through play and fun.
And attention and dopamine are
Yeah.
you know, as you know, so
Yeah.
you're there, you're in a high stress environment, you're gonna concentrate,
Oh
aren't
yeah.
you? Yeah.
Yeah. You sure
It,
are.
it's the racing driver, isn't it?
Yeah.
Heading to the wall.
Yeah.
So not Geo Brain Games. So is that still running or
No, Brain Games, I think we last season of it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So, that show is over, but there are 60 something episodes and I think they live on Disney Plus now. So they're around and they're also, you can find them online.
okay? Yeah. Well, I will look it up. And who smarted? I want to know
Yes.
about your podcast and
Yeah.
very envious of your 21 million downloads. I know I had Lindsay McMahon. Gets millions of downloads on her IELTS podcast
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, but or maybe a few 100,000, I can't remember now. But 21 million, it's quite a feat. What do
Yeah.
you attribute this success to?
So we came up with Who Smarted during the pandemic, and we just wanted to create something that was like a short 15-minute educational show for families that was narrated, scripted, all about science and history. And I think initially we benefited from the fact that, we were creating a screen-free option for folks to listen to during a time when all these kids were glued to their screens all day. So that helped a lot. But it's also just a really fun show. Like it's all the stuff we love about play and games is in this show. It's 15 minutes long. Every episode of Who Smarted, there's a journey to learn about some other really cool thing about the world, whether it's science, history, pop culture, food, the human body, space. And so the fact that we're always touching on new topics and that we make each topic uniquely interesting is a huge part of the success of that show. But in terms of the growth of the show, I mean, we figured out early on that the best way to grow a podcast is to go talk on other people's like what I'm doing right now. Talking on other people's podcasts to their audiences, providing value to their audiences, being engaging, being very generous with our time and information. That was huge and continues to be a huge way we grow our shows. So we're always reaching out to other podcasters that we think are interesting to talk to them and meet them and try and provide some value and raise a little awareness of the projects we're doing.
Good. And that's still ongoing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do 4 episodes every week of that show. So yeah, Who Smarted just keeps going and it's still growing. So it's our really our flagship podcast.
And reading today as well, I think I can't remember what it was. Maybe 1990, there was like 70,000 homeschool kids in the US,
Yeah.
but as of last year, it was 5 million.
Yeah.
So do you think parents, educators, that they're looking at this kind of content to actually teach the kids, like say, at home?
So we look at first of all, the homeschool audience, homeschool families in America is growing like crazy. There's so many more families that are like, we want to teach our kids at home. We want to do it our way. And we have a tremendous number of those, something like, I think 15 or 20,000 families, homeschool families listen to Who Smarted every week. And they're really great fans because they're also very vocal. So they tell us what's working and what's not. They're very engaged with us. But I think our show, because every episode of Who Smarted is short and it kind of gives the introduction to it, an idea like, well, if we're talking about, how gravity works, we'll give like 3 key concepts around gravity and we teach it in a way that and it's a story and it's engaging. But what we like to say is we'll get your kid excited about the brand of that, whatever the topic is. We'll get them curious, but we're not trying to literally be a class or a curriculum. We're just trying to make it fun to learn, and we're trying to spark curiosity. And then it's up to the teacher or the parent to actually, to spend the 30 minutes going through a curriculum. But we make it easy for them to do that, because by listening to Who Smarted first, the kid's like, now I want to know more, right? Versus starting cold, and you're like, okay, let's open our books, and now we're going to talk about this formula. I mean, that's where I got lost in school. And so Who Smarted is meant to spark some curiosity. So when you do open the book and start talking about the formulas, the kid's excited to learn. So works for adults too, by the way. Adults love the show and get excited about these topics too.
Yeah, and we'll have a link to the show in the show notes as well. So please do look at that to the audience. So what's for the future for you and Atomic Entertainment? Where are you looking at branching out next, or what kind of creative projects can you tell us about?
Yeah, I'll tell you about a few. So one thing we're doing is we've actually started offering services to help other podcasters grow their shows, sort of teaching them some of the methods we're using. So we're launching a program called Crossfluence. That's a way for, just to kind of share what we've learned and make it easy for other folks. Our feeling is when every podcast grows, all podcasts grow. I did my
It's early in the morning. It's okay.
Yeah, coffee's kicking in. So that's one project. But in terms of other podcasts, so we're working on a new show now that's going to be a daily 10-minute show that's like a brain training show. So every day there'll be like a short 8 to 10-minute episode that actually helps you get better at being in the world. So it's going to be about logic and critical thinking and problem solving. And so that, by listening to this short episode, you actually improve your brain a little bit. So that's a project we're very excited about. And then we're planning to launch another couple of family shows next year. And we also do true crime shows. We have a show called Slaycation. That's all about murders that happen on vacation. So
okay.
We'll be doing more like that also. But yeah, so we got a whole bunch of stuff on the horizon.
So a lot of people say it's mostly women listen to true crime podcasts, read the magazines. Is it kind of maybe more middle-aged women? Is that your kind of demographic? Is that what you experience, or am I?
Yes. No, it's 100%. Yeah. I don't know, middle-aged, maybe younger to middle-aged, but like 30 to 50-year-old women is the largest audience for true crime.
Good. And I know there's been a lot of true crime. I know West Cork as well is one about Sophie Toscon-Plantier, which I listened to was a real treat. Well, not the story is not a treat, but the way it was produced was. So, Jerry, thanks again for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, this was a delight. Thank you. This was so fun. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the EFL Magazine podcast. We hope you found inspiration and practical tips to support your journey as an educator or school owner. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review to help us to reach more listeners like you. Until next time, keep teaching, learning, and growing your impact in the world of English language education.